The diamond glinted accusingly in Ethan's palm as the CEO's face drained of color, her perfectly composed mask cracking before the entire executive floor. In that frozen moment between janitor and billionaire, neither could imagine how this $30 million stone would completely transform both their world. Before we continue, don't forget to subscribe to the channel, like the video, and comment where in the world you're watching from. Let's go. The morning Ethan Rodriguez found the diamond wasn't different from any other day. He'd clocked in at 4 a.m. at Langford Tower, the gleaming headquarters of Langford Industries, following his usual routine with practiced efficiency. 6 floors of garbage collection, restroom checks, and floor polishing, all before the executive staff arrived at 7:30. The building was his domain during these quiet hours. The soft hum of his cleaning cart, the only company he needed. Ethan had been working as a night janitor for 3 years now, ever since his wife Mariana's illness had taken her, leaving him to raise their daughter Lucia alone. The graveyard shift meant he could be home when his daughter returned from school, helping with homework and making dinner before his neighbor watched her during his shift. The pay wasn't great, but it covered the rent and Lucia's asthma medication. Most importantly, it gave them stability. That morning, he was emptying the trash in the executive suite on the 50th floor when he noticed something unusual. The wastebasket in Alexandra Langford's office, the notoriously demanding CEO of Langford Industries, contained torn documents that had been meticulously shredded by hand rather than run through the high-security shredders available throughout the floor. Ethan thought it odd but continued with his routine. As he emptied the bin, something glinted at the bottom, catching his eye. Reaching down, his fingers closed around a small, hard object. He pulled it out and found himself staring at what appeared to be a large, uncut diamond. "What the hell?" he whispered, holding it up to the light. The stone caught the morning sun, streaming through the floor-to-ceiling windows, exploding into a prism of colors so vibrant they seemed to dance across the walls of the otherwise sterile office. Ethan knew 2 things immediately. This was valuable, and it didn't belong in the trash. His mind raced. The janitorial staff handbook was clear. Any items found during cleaning were to be turned in to security immediately. But finding a diamond worth what must be thousands, possibly tens of thousands of dollars, that kind of money could change everything for Lucia and him. For a brief, shameful moment, he considered pocketing it. The weight of Lucia's medical bills, the constant struggle to keep their heads above water, the college fund that existed only in his dreams, all of it pressed down on him as the diamond sat heavy in his palm. But then he thought of Lucia's face. What lesson would he be teaching his daughter if she ever found out? His late wife's voice seemed to whisper in his ear, "Do what's right, even when it's hard." Ethan wrapped the diamond in his handkerchief and secured it in his pocket. He would finish his shift and then turn it in properly when Miss Langford arrived. He wanted to hand it to her personally, to make sure it reached its rightful owner. By 7:30, the building had begun to stir with early arrivals. Ethan positioned his cart near the executive elevator bank, waiting. He had never actually spoken to Alexandra Langford before. Like most of the night staff, he knew her only by reputation. Brilliant, ruthless, and coldly efficient. The employees called her the Ice Queen when they thought no one important was listening. At precisely 7:45, the private elevator doors opened, and Alexandra Langford stepped out. Even having seen her from a distance, Ethan wasn't prepared for her commanding presence. Tall and impeccably dressed in a tailored navy suit, her dark hair pulled back in a severe bun, she moved with the confident precision of someone who had conquered every room she'd ever entered. She was flanked by 2 assistants, both speaking rapidly about the day's schedule as they struggled to keep pace with her brisk stride. None of them spared Ethan a glance as they passed. He was invisible, as maintenance staff often were to executives. "Ms. Langford," Ethan called, his voice steadier than he expected. She stopped abruptly, her assistants nearly colliding with her back. Slowly, she turned, her expression a mixture of surprise and annoyance at being addressed by someone she clearly didn't recognize as warranting her attention. "I found something in your office that I believe belongs to you," Ethan continued, approaching cautiously. He reached into his pocket and withdrew the handkerchief. Her eyes narrowed. "And you are?" "Ethan Rodriguez, ma'am. Night cleaning staff." A flicker of something, recognition perhaps, crossed her face. What did you find? Her tone was clipped, professional. Ethan carefully unfolded the cloth, revealing the diamond. This was in your trash bin, Mrs. Langford. I thought you should have it back. The reaction that followed was not at all what he expected. Alexandra Langford's composed facade cracked. Her eyes widened. Her lips parted in shock, and her hand flew to her mouth. The two assistants behind her gasped audibly, exchanging alarmed glances. "Where exactly did you find this?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. "In your office wastebasket, ma'am. This morning during my rounds." She stared at the diamond, then at Ethan, her expression unreadable. The entire executive floor had gone silent. Employees who had been rushing to their desks had stopped to stare at the unusual scene, the untouchable CEO and the janitor facing each other across what suddenly felt like a vast divide. "Mr. Rodriguez," she said finally, her voice regaining its authoritative edge. "Please come with me." Without waiting for a response, she turned and walked toward her office, leaving her stunned assistants behind. Ethan hesitated, then followed, still holding the diamond. As he passed the gathered employees, he noticed their expression, a mixture of curiosity, concern, and something that looked strangely like pity. The heavy glass door to Alexandra Langford's office closed behind them, with a soft click that felt oddly final. Alexandra Langford's office was a study in minimalist luxury, all clean lines, steel and glass. Unlike other executive offices filled with personal touches, hers contained nothing that revealed the woman behind the empire. No family photos, no mementos, nothing but carefully selected modern art that conveyed power rather than personality. She gestured for Ethan to place the diamond on her desk, a single slab of black marble that dominated the room. He did so carefully, the stone looking somehow smaller against the expansive darkness of the surface. "Do you know what this is, Mr. Rodriguez?" she asked, her voice controlled once again. "A diamond, ma'am. A valuable one, I'd guess." Alexandra Langford laughed, but there was no humor in it. "Yes, a diamond. The Langford Blue, to be precise. A 72-carat rough diamond that's been in my family for 3 generations." She picked it up, turning it in the light. "It's worth approximately $30 million. Ethan felt his knees weaken. $30 million. The number was incomprehensible. "It was reported stolen from my personal safe 2 days ago," she continued, watching him closely. "The theft was kept quiet while security conducted their investigation." Ethan's stomach dropped. She thought he had stolen it. "Ms. Langford, I swear I just found it this morning in your trash. I had no idea." She held up a hand, silencing him. "I believe you, Mr. Rodriguez." Her words hung in the air between them. Ethan blinked, confused by the unexpected statement. "You believe me? If you had stolen it, you wouldn't have returned it so publicly." She moved around her desk and leaned against it, studying him with an intensity that made him uncomfortable. "And the trash is exactly where I would expect to find it, considering the circumstances." She pressed a button on her desk. "Simon, cancel my morning meetings and have security pull the footage from my office for the past 48 hours. Full sweep. And get Reynolds up here immediately." Alexandra turned back to Ethan. "Your finding this diamond has exposed something I've suspected for some time. Someone close to me is attempting to frame me for insurance fraud." Ethan stood frozen, feeling caught in a corporate drama he couldn't begin to understand. "I should probably get back to work," he said, taking a step toward the door. "No," Alexandra said sharply. "You're a material witness now. I need you to stay." A knock at the door interrupted them. A tall man in an expensive suit entered, his face flushed with what appeared to be annoyance at being summoned. "You wanted to see me, Alexandra?" His voice was smooth, cultured, but there was an undercurrent of tension. "Yes, James, this is Ethan Rodriguez. He found the Langford Blue in my office trash this morning." She gestured to the diamond still sitting on her desk. James Reynolds paled visibly. His eyes darted between Alexandra, Ethan, and the diamond. That's impossible. The diamond was stolen. The police report was filed prematurely." Alexandra finished for him. On your recommendation, as I recall. The atmosphere in the room had changed, charged with a dangerous current. Ethan could feel it crackling between the two executives. Who would have access to your office after hours, James? Alexandra asked, her tone conversational, but her eyes sharp as flint. Who would know the combination to my safe? Who stood to benefit from the insurance claim and the scandal that would follow when investigators discovered it was an inside job? Who has been quietly selling company shares short for the past month? James's hand moved suddenly toward his jacket. Alexandra's eyes widened. Security! She shouted, lunging forward. What happened next was chaos. James pulled something from his inside pocket. Ethan caught the glint of metal, and Alexandra threw herself at him without hesitation. They collided, crashing into a side table, sending a vase shattering across the floor. Acting on instinct, Ethan sprinted forward and tackled James from behind. They went down hard, Ethan using his weight to pin the man to the floor. A small pistol skittered across the polished surface, coming to rest against the wall. Security burst through the door, weapons drawn. Within seconds, they had James Reynolds restrained. He spat curses, his composed facade completely evaporated. You don't understand what you're doing, he hissed at Alexandra as they dragged him to his feet. This company is dying under your leadership. The board will hear about this. Alexandra straightened her jacket, a small cut on her cheek, the only evidence of the struggle. The board already knows, James. They authorized the investigation into your activities 3 weeks ago. We just needed proof of your intent. She nodded toward the diamond. Thank you for providing it. As security led Reynolds away, Alexandra turned to Ethan, who stood awkwardly by her desk, trying to process what had just happened. Are you all right, Mr. Rodriguez? She asked, her voice softer than he'd heard it before. Yes, ma'am. Are you? He gestured to the cut on her face. She touched it absently. I've had worse. For the first time, she really looked at him, not through him or past him, but at him. You didn't hesitate. You could have been shot, Ethan shrugged, uncomfortable with her scrutiny. I didn't really think about it. That's what makes it remarkable. She moved to a hidden panel in the wall, pressed her palm against it, and revealed a small bar. She poured 2 glasses of amber liquid and offered one to Ethan. He shook his head. I'm still on duty, ma'am. A ghost of a smile touched her lips. And I think we can make an exception after you helped prevent a murder in my office. She set the glass down on the desk near him. Besides, I've just fired my CFO and will need to address the board within the hour. I could use a moment of normalcy first. She took a sip from her glass, then reached for her phone. I need to make some call, but please stay. There's a reward for the return of the diamond that I intend to see you receive. Ethan's mind immediately went to Lucia, to her medication, to the college fund that could now become a reality, to the possibility of moving to an apartment with better air quality for her asthma. Thank you, Ms. Langford, but that's not necessary. I was just doing what anyone would do. She looked at him curiously. No, Mr. Rodriguez, what you did is not what anyone would do. Most people, finding a diamond in the trash, would have kept it. Most people, seeing a gun, would have run. You did neither. She set her glass down. May I ask why? The question caught him off guard. He thought about it for a moment, then answered honestly, I have a daughter. She's 10. Everything I do with her watching, even when she's not there. I have to be someone she can be proud of. Alexandra's expression changed, something vulnerable flickering across her features before disappearing behind her professional mask. Your daughter is fortunate, she said quietly. Then, more briskly, now, about that reward, I insist. The next few hours passed in a blur for Ethan. Alexandra Langford insisted he remain in her office while she handled the fallout from James Reynolds' arrest. Security officers came and went, taking his statement about finding the diamond and the subsequent confrontation. Somewhere in the midst of it all, his supervisor was informed that he had been temporarily reassigned to executive assistance, a vague designation that seemed to mean sitting in the CEO's office drinking coffee that cost more per pound than he earned in an hour. By noon, The office had transformed into a war room. Legal teams huddled in corners while PR specialists crafted statements. Through it all, Alexandra moved with practiced efficiency, commanding the room without raising her voice once. Occasionally, she would glance at Ethan, who sat uncomfortably on a leather couch by the window, feeling increasingly out of place in his janitor's uniform. At 1 o'clock, she dismissed everyone with a wave of her hand. "We'll reconvene at 3. I need 30 minutes. The room emptied quickly, leaving only Ethan and Alexandra. She sighed deeply and removed her suit jacket, hanging it carefully on a rack near her desk. The simple action made her seem suddenly more human, less the corporate titan, and more just a woman who had narrowly escaped being shot that morning. "Hungry?" she asked, moving to her desk and pressing an intercom button. Before Ethan could answer, she spoke into the device. Patricia, have the kitchen send up 2 of whatever the special is today. And coffee." She looked at Ethan. "Or would you prefer something else?" "Coffee is fine. Thank you," he said, still processing the surreal situation. "Good. Now, while we wait for lunch, let's discuss your reward." She sat down across from him, a tablet in hand. "And the company insurance policy offers a 10% finder's fee for recovered assets of significant value." Ethan's eyes widened. 10% of 30 million? 3 million? Yes. She said it so casually, as if discussing pocket change, rather than a sum that would completely transform his life. "However, there's also the matter of preventing what could have been a murder. The company has protocols for that too." Oddly enough, she swiped through screens on her tablet. Reynolds would have faced charges for the theft and insurance fraud regardless, but once he pulled that gun, she looked up at Ethan. "You saved my life, Mr. Rodriguez. That carries a different kind of value." Ethan shifted uncomfortably. "Anyone would have done the same." "We both know that's not true." Alexandra set down her tablet. "Now tell me about your daughter." The abrupt change of subject caught him off guard. "Lucia. She's everything to me. Smart as a whip, loves science and art, has trouble with her asthma, especially in the winter, but never complains." He found himself smiling, despite the strangeness of the day. "She wants to be an astronaut and a doctor at the same time. Somehow. Ambitious," Alexandra commented, something unreadable crossing her face. "No, how do you manage the night shift with a child?" "My neighbor, Mrs. Guzman, stays with her while I work. It's not ideal, but it lets me be there for her after school, help with homework, make dinner. The important stuff." The intercom buzzed, and an assistant entered with their lunch, some kind of gourmet salad with grilled chicken that probably cost more than Ethan's grocery budget for a week. They ate in silence for a few minutes. "Where did you work before Langford Industries?" Alexandra asked suddenly. "I was in construction for 12 years, foreman for the last 5, but when my wife got sick, I needed more flexible hours to care for her and Lucia. After she passed, I kept the night shift so I could be there for Lucia during the day." Alexandra's eyes softened almost imperceptibly. "I'm sorry about your wife." "Thank you." Ethan pushed his salad around the plate. "Hey, it's been 3 years. We're doing okay. You gave up your career for your family." It wasn't a question, but Ethan answered anyway. "It wasn't really a choice. They needed me." Alexandra stared at him for a long moment, then seemed to come to a decision. She stood and walked to the window, looking out at the city sprawled below. "My father built this company from nothing," she said, her back to him. "Started with one small electronics shop and expanded into what you see today. He was brilliant, driven, and completely absent from my life. I can count on one hand the number of school events he attended." She turned to face Ethan. "When he died 5 years ago, I took over. I've tripled the company's value, expanded into 17 new markets, and made Langford Industries a global leader in technological innovation." "That's impressive," Ethan said, unsure where this was going. "It is. And do you know what I realized this morning when I thought James might actually shoot me?" She didn't wait for an answer. "I realized that if I died today, my obituary would list all those professional achievements and nothing else. No family, no one who would miss Alexandra the person rather than Alexandra the CEO." Ethan remained silent, sensing she needed to speak rather than be spoken to. "The truth, Mr. Rodriguez, is that I've become exactly what my father was. All ambition, no humanity." She walked back to her seat. back. And then you come along, a man who gave up his career to care for his family, who returns a $30 million diamond without hesitation, who risks his life for someone he doesn't even know. And I have to wonder what I've been doing with my life. Before Ethan could respond, her intercom buzzed again. Ms. Langford, the board is assembled in the conference room. Alexandra pressed a button. I tell them I'll be there in 5 minutes. She stood, slipping back into her suit jacket and with it, her CEO persona. Mr. Rodriguez, I'd like you to join that meeting. Me? Why? Because I'm about to tell them that in addition to your finder's fee, I'm creating a new position for you. If you're interested. What kind of position? Ethan asked cautiously. Head of Facilities and Building Operations. It would be days, not nights. Better pay, benefits, and a more flexible schedule for your daughter. Ethan stared at her, stunned. But I don't have the qualifications for a position like that. You have 12 years of construction experience, including 5 as a foreman. You understand building systems better than most of our current maintenance management. And more importantly, you have integrity and leadership qualities I need in my executive team. She paused. You also saved my life, which I consider relevant to the hiring decision. I don't know what to say. Say you'll consider it. Alexandra checked her watch. But first, let's go face the board. They're not going to be happy about Reynolds, and I could use someone with a clear moral compass in the room. As they walked toward the conference room, Ethan's mind raced. The day had started with him emptying trash bin, and now he was about to sit in on a board meeting with the company's top executives. More importantly, he was being offered a job that would mean regular hours with Lucia, better pay, better health care for her asthma. One more thing, Alexandra said as they reached the conference room doors. About the reward. The $3 million. Yes, it's yours regardless of whether you take the job. I've already instructed legal to process it. She straightened her jacket. Consider it compensation for emotional distress after having a gun pulled in your vicinity. Before he could respond, she pushed open the door, revealing a room of stern-faced executives seated around a massive table. All eyes turned to them, more specifically, to Ethan in his janitor's uniform. Ladies and gentlemen, Alexandra announced, her voice ringing with authority. This is Ethan Rodriguez. He recovered the Langford Blue this morning and helped apprehend James Reynolds during an attempted assault. I've asked him to join us as we discuss next steps. The boardroom fell silent as Ethan entered alongside Alexandra. 12 pairs of eyes studied him with expressions ranging from curiosity to barely concealed disdain. He felt acutely aware of his uniform. The navy blue work pants, the company-issued shirt with maintenance embroidered above the pocket, the leather work boots scuffed from years of use. Ms. Langford, a silver-haired man at the far end of the table, spoke first, his voice carrying the practiced neutrality of corporate politics. Perhaps we should discuss the Reynolds situation privately before involving outside parties. Alexandra's smile was razor-thin. Mr. Rodriguez is not an outside party, Walter. He's a key witness to this morning's events and the person responsible for recovering the Langford Blue. She gestured to an empty chair beside her at the head of the table. Please, Ethan. Reluctantly, Ethan took the seat, feeling the weight of the executive's stares. He'd never sat at a table like this before, polished mahogany that reflected the recessed lighting above, plush leather chairs that probably cost more than his car. Now, Alexandra continued, as you've all been briefed, James Reynolds attempted to frame me for insurance fraud by stealing the Langford Blue and planting evidence suggesting I was involved. When his plan was exposed, he pulled a gun in my office. Murmurs rippled through the room. A woman with a sharp bob and sharper eyes leaned forward. And you're certain of his motives? Digital forensics found evidence on his laptop. He's been systematically selling company shares short for months while buying put options set to mature next week. He stood to make millions if our stock crashed following a scandal involving me. And how exactly did Another board member glanced at Ethan. Rodriguez become involved? Alexandra nodded toward Ethan. Perhaps he should tell you himself. Suddenly the center of attention, Ethan cleared his throat. I was just doing my job, emptying trash in Miss Langford's office early this morning. I found the diamond at the bottom of her wastebasket and turned it in when she arrived. Just like that, the skepticism in the board member's voice was unmistakable. You found a diamond worth millions and simply handed it over? Yes, sir. Ethan met the man's gaze steadily. It wasn't mine. The simplicity of his answer seemed to disarm the room. Alexandra continued. When Reynolds realized his plan had failed, he became desperate. If Mr. Rodriguez hadn't intervened, I might not be sitting here now. The silver-haired man, Walter, folded his hands on the table. And this is all very dramatic, Alexandra, but what's done is done. Our immediate concern is containing the PR fallout and appointing an interim CFO. I have candidates for the interim position prepared, Alexandra replied. As for PR, I've already approved a statement that will go out within the hour, but there's another matter I want to discuss. She glanced at Ethan. I'm creating a new executive position, head of facilities and building operations, and offering it to Mr. Rodriguez. The reaction was immediate. Several board members began speaking at once, their carefully maintained corporate composure slipping. Absolutely inappropriate. No qualifications. This is not how we make executive appointments. Alexandra let them speak, her expression unchanged. When the noise subsided, she continued as if there had been no interruption. Mr. Rodriguez has 12 years of construction experience, including 5 as a foreman. He understands our building systems better than anyone currently on staff, and he's demonstrated the kind of integrity this company needs more of. Her voice took on an edge. He's also saved us from a PR disaster and potential shareholder lawsuit that would have cost hundreds of millions. Walter cleared his throat. Alexandra, with all due respect to Mr. Rodriguez, this seems impulsive. There are protocols for executive appointments, including background checks, multiple interviews, all of which will be followed. Alexandra cut in smoothly. But I wanted the board to hear my intentions directly, especially since I'll also be authorizing his finder's fee for the diamond's recovery. Finder's fee? The sharp-eyed woman raised an eyebrow. Yes, Diane. As per company policy, 10% of the recovered asset's value, $3 million. The number hung in the air. Ethan fought to keep his expression neutral, though his heart was racing. $3 million. The college fund for Lucia, a house in a neighborhood with clean air, specialists for her asthma. Diane leaned back in her chair. I see you've made up your mind. I have. Alexandra's tone made it clear the matter was settled. Now, shall we discuss the interim CFO candidates? The meeting proceeded with discussions about financial projections, shareholder confidence, and succession planning. Ethan sat quietly, observing the corporate chess match playing out before him. These people operated in a different world than his, one of quarterly reports and market capitalizations, rather than cleaning supplies and broken HVAC systems. Yet as he watched Alexandra navigate the room, he noticed something. Despite her authority, she was isolated. The other executives deferred to her, but maintained a careful distance. There was respect, certainly, but no warmth, no real connection. After an hour, the meeting concluded. The board members filed out, several of them glancing curiously at Ethan as they passed. Alexandra remained seated, reviewing notes on her tablet. That went well, she said without looking up. Ethan raised an eyebrow. Did it? They seemed upset about my appointment. They're always upset about something. She set the tablet down. Walter and Diane will come around once they see your qualifications. The others follow their lead. Ms. Langford, Alexandra, please. If we're going to work together, we should be on a first-name basis. Alexandra, he said, the name feeling foreign on his tongue. I haven't said I'll take the job. She looked genuinely surprised. Why wouldn't you? Better hours, better pay, much better after the finder's fee, and a position that actually utilizes your experience. It's not that simple. Ethan leaned forward. I appreciate the offer, but this isn't my world. I'm not sure it's where I belong. And where do you belong? Working nights for minimum wage, when you clearly have the capability for more. The question stung, but Ethan didn't flinch. I belong wherever I can best take care of my daughter. Right now, I'm not sure if that's here or not. Alexandra studied him, her expression softening slightly. Fair enough. Take some time to think about it. She glanced at her watch. It's nearly 4. Don't you usually pick up your daughter soon? Yes, Mrs. Guzman brings her home from school, but I should be there by 5. He hesitated. I should probably get back to my regular duties for now. Absolutely not. You've had a gun pulled on you today in my office. Go home to your daughter. She pressed the intercom. Patricia, please arrange for a car to take Mr. Rodriguez home. That's not necessary, Ethan began. It is. Alexandra stood, signaling the end of the conversation. The paperwork for your finder's fee will be ready tomorrow. As for the job offer, think it over. I'll expect your answer by the end of the week. As Ethan left her office, he felt as though he was walking in a dream. The day had begun with him finding a diamond and might end with him becoming a millionaire. But as the elevator descended, he couldn't shake the image of Alexandra Langford sitting at the head of that boardroom table. Powerful, respected, and utterly alone. The company car, a sleek black Lincoln with tinted windows, pulled up to Ethan's apartment building just before 5 o'clock. The driver, a professional woman who hadn't blinked an eye at delivering a janitor to one of the city's less affluent neighborhoods, handed him a business card. Ms. Langford asked me to give you this. It's her private number, in case you need anything. Ethan took the card, nodded his thanks, and watched the car pull away. The contrast between the luxury vehicle and his surroundings couldn't have been more stark. His building was decent, but showing its age. Peeling paint on the railings, cracked concrete steps, a collection of bicycles chained to the fence. As he climbed the stairs to the 3rd floor, the events of the day seemed increasingly surreal. Had he really sat in on a board meeting at Langford Industries? Had the CEO really offered him an executive position and a $3 million reward? He reached his apartment door and paused, taking a deep breath. For the first time since morning, he would return to the world that made sense to him, the small, tidy apartment where he and Lucia had built their life after Maria's death. The moment he opened the door, a small whirlwind crashed into him. "Daddy, you're home early!" Lucia wrapped her arms around his waist, her dark curls bouncing as she looked up at him with Maria's eyes. "Mrs. Guzman said you called and said you were coming home, but I didn't believe her because you never come home early." Ethan lifted his daughter into a hug, the familiar weight of her in his arms, centering him after the chaos of the day. "Well, today is a special day, Mija." Mrs. Guzman, a gray-haired woman in her 60s, appeared from the kitchen, wiping her hands on a dishcloth. "There was a fancy car outside," she said in Spanish, her tone curious but discreet. "Everything okay?" "Yes, everything's fine. Thank you for staying late with Lucia. There was a situation at work." The older woman nodded, gathering her things. As she passed Ethan on her way out, she patted his arm. "Whatever happened, it must be good. You're smiling more than I've seen in months." After she left, Lucia pulled Ethan to the couch, bubbling with questions about why he was home early and why a fancy car had brought him. He sat down, wondering how to explain the day's events to a 10-year-old. "Something happened at work today," he began, choosing his words carefully. "I found something valuable that was lost, and it turned out to be very important to my boss." Lucia's eyes widened. "But like treasure? Was it treasure, Daddy?" Ethan laughed. "Sort of. It was a diamond, a very special one that belongs to the CEO's family." "What's a CEO?" "The boss of the whole company. Her name is Alexandra Langford." Lucia nodded solemnly, processing this information. "And she was happy you found her diamond?" "Yes, very happy. So happy that she might give me a new job, one where I would work during the day instead of at night." The change in Lucia's expression was immediate, a burst of pure joy that made Ethan's heart ache. He hadn't realized how much his night shifts had affected her until he saw the hope in her eyes at the possibility of change. "You mean you'd be here at night? We could have dinner together every day, and you could tuck me in." "That's right, Mija." Lucia threw her arms around his neck. "That's the best news ever. When do you start? Can you start tomorrow?" Ethan gently disentangled himself from her embrace. "I haven't decided if I'm going to take the job yet. It would be very different from what I do now." Lucia's face fell. "But why wouldn't you take it? Don't you want to be home at night?" "Of course I do, but it's complicated." How could he explain corporate politics and social hierarchies to a child? How could he convey his discomfort at being suddenly thrust into a world he didn't understand? "Is it because you'd have to wear a suit?" You'd look handsome in a suit, Daddy. Ethan smiled despite himself. It's not about the suit. It's about whether I'd be good at the job, whether I belong there. Lucia considered this with the straightforward logic of childhood. And if the boss lady thinks you'd be good at it, why don't you think so too? The question hit harder than Ethan expected. Why indeed? Was it just fear holding him back? Or something deeper, a belief that people like him didn't get to climb the corporate ladder, didn't get invited into boardrooms and offered executive positions? It's just a big change, he said finally, and I need to think about it. Lucia nodded, apparently satisfied with this answer for now. Can we have pizza tonight to celebrate you finding the diamond? Absolutely. Ethan ruffled her hair. Go wash up while I order. As Lucia skipped off to the bathroom, Ethan pulled out his phone to order their usual half cheese for Lucia, half pepperoni for him. But as he unlocked the screen, he saw 6 missed calls and a text message from a number he didn't recognize. Mr. Rodriguez, this is Alexandra Langford. Please call me as soon as possible regarding an urgent development. His stomach tightened. What now? Had the board overruled her offer? Had something gone wrong with the finder's fee paperwork? He dialed the number, and she answered on the first ring. Mr. Rodriguez, thank you for calling back. Is everything all right? Not exactly. Her voice was tense. There's been a development with Reynolds. The police found evidence in his apartment suggesting he wasn't working alone. We believe there may be others involved in the scheme. Ethan moved to the window, lowering his voice so Lucia wouldn't overhear. What does that mean? It means there could still be people within the company who wish me harm. People who now know you were instrumental in exposing Reynolds. She paused. I'm concerned about your safety. The implication sank in slowly. You think I might be in danger? I think it's a possibility we can't ignore. I've arranged for security to be posted near your building tonight, but I'd prefer if you and your daughter stayed somewhere else until we can be certain. Ethan glanced toward the bathroom, where he could hear Lucia singing to herself as she washed her hands. The thought of her being in danger because of what had happened today made his blood run cold. Where would we go? I have a guest house on my property. It's secure, gated with its own security system. You'd be safe there while we sort this out. Ethan hesitated. The offer was generous, but it would mean stepping even further into Alexandra Langford's world, a world he wasn't sure he belonged in. Mr. Rodriguez. Ethan. Alexandra's voice softened slightly. I understand this is a lot to ask, but I take the safety of my employees seriously, especially when they're in danger because of their association with me. Please, just for a few days. Lucia emerged from the bathroom, her face bright with anticipation of pizza night. Looking at her, Ethan knew he couldn't risk her safety, no matter how uncomfortable the situation made him. All right, he said finally. We'll come, but I'll need to explain this to my daughter. Of course. I'll send a car in an hour. And Ethan, yes, thank you for trusting me. After he hung up, Ethan stood for a moment, gathering his thoughts. How had his life changed so dramatically in the span of a single day? This morning, he had been just another invisible worker in the Langford Tower. Now, he was about to take his daughter to stay at the CEO's guest house while security teams investigated a potential threat against them. Hey, Daddy. Lucia tugged at his sleeve. Did you order the pizza? Ethan knelt down to her level, meeting her curious gaze. Change of plans? Misha, we need to pack a bag and stay somewhere else for a few days. Like a vacation. Her eyes lit up. Something like that. It's a nice house with a big yard, and it belongs to the boss lady I told you about. The one whose diamond you found. That's right. Lucia considered this information, her brow furrowing in concentration. Is she nice? The question gave Ethan pause. Was Alexandra Langford nice? She was competent, formidable, even generous in her way, but nice. It wasn't the first word that came to mind. She's interesting, he said finally, and she wants to help us. This seemed to satisfy Lucia. Okay. Can we still have pizza there? Ethan laughed, some of the tension leaving his shoulders. I think that can be arranged. Alexandra Langford's estate was not merely a home, but a statement. 20 acres of manicured grounds surrounding a modernist mansion of glass, steel and stone. As the car passed through the imposing security gate and wound up the long driveway, Ethan felt Lucia press her face against the window, her eyes wide with wonder. "Daddy, it's like a castle," she whispered, awestruck by the fountain in the circular drive and the dramatic lighting that illuminated the mansion's clean, severe line. "Remember what I told you, Misha," Ethan said gently. "We're staying in the guest house, not the main house, and we're only here until it's safe to go home." The car rounded a bend, and the guest house came into view. Ethan had expected something modest, perhaps a converted garage or pool house. Instead, he saw what looked like a fully equipped residence that would have been considered luxurious by anyone's standards. Single-story, but spacious, with a deck overlooking a small private garden. The driver pulled to a stop and opened their door. "Ms. Langford asked me to show you in and make sure you have everything you need." They followed him up a stone path to the front door, which he unlocked with an electronic key card. "This is for you," he said, handing it to Ethan. "It's programmed to access the guest house and the grounds, but not the main residence." The interior was a study in understated luxury, open concept living space with hardwood floors, modern furniture in neutral tone, and subtle lighting that created a warm atmosphere. Floor-to-ceiling windows looked out onto the garden, which was lit by small pathway lights. "And the kitchen is fully stocked," the driver explained, gesturing to the sleek cooking space with its marble countertops and high-end appliances. "Bedrooms are down that hallway, 2 of them, both with ensuite bathroom. Mrs. Langford had some children's books and games delivered, which are in the 2nd bedroom." Lucia had already disappeared down the hallway, exclaiming over her discoveries. Ethan stood in the center of the living room, feeling distinctly out of place in his janitor's uniform. "Oh, and these arrived for you as well." The driver indicated 2 garment bags hanging in the entryway. "Ms. Langford thought you might need some additional clothing during your stay." Before Ethan could respond, the front door opened and Alexandra Langford herself stepped in. She had changed from her business suit into dark trousers and a cashmere sweater, her hair released from its severe bun to fall in waves past her shoulders. The transformation was striking. Without the armor of her corporate attire, she appeared younger, less formidable. "Thank you, Michael," she said to the driver. "That will be all for tonight." After the driver left, an awkward silence fell between them. Alexandra seemed to realize she had entered without knocking and shifted slightly. "I apologize for the intrusion. I wanted to make sure you were settling in." "It's your house," Ethan replied. "We're grateful for your hospitality." She glanced around, as if seeing the space through his eyes. "It's not much, but I hope it will be comfortable for a few days." Not much. The guest house was easily 3 times the size of his apartment, with furnishings that probably cost more than he made in a year. But he recognized the comment as an attempt to make him feel at ease, rather than genuine modesty. "It's very nice," he said simply. Lucia is thrilled. As if summoned by her name, his daughter burst back into the room, skidding to a stop when she noticed Alexandra. Her eyes widened as she took in the tall, elegant woman. "Are you the Diamond Lady?" she asked without preamble. A flicker of surprise crossed Alexandra's face, followed by something that might have been amusement. "I suppose I am, and you must be Lucia. Your father has told me about you." Lucia approached, studying Alexandra with frank curiosity. "Thank you for letting us stay in your house. It's the prettiest place I've ever been." "You're very welcome." Alexandra's response was formal, but not cold. She seemed unsure how to interact with a child, a woman more accustomed to boardrooms than playrooms. "Daddy said you might give him a new job where he doesn't have to work at night anymore. Are you going to?" "Lucia," Ethan began, embarrassed by his daughter's directness. "It's all right," Alexandra said. "Yes, I've offered your father a position that would allow him to work regular daytime hours. But it's his decision whether to accept." Lucia nodded solemnly. "He should take it. He gets really tired working at night, and sometimes he falls asleep when we're watching movies together." Ethan felt his face warm. Lucia was innocently revealing the small compromises and struggles of their life, things he tried his best to shield her from. Alexandra's expression softened almost imperceptibly. "I see. Well, we'll have to make sure that doesn't happen anymore, won't we?" She turned to Ethan. "I've ordered dinner to be delivered. I hope you don't mind. I thought you might be hungry after the day you've had." "That's very thoughtful." Thank you. He hesitated, then added, I promised Lucia pizza tonight. Pizza it is, then. Alexandra glanced at her watch. It should be here in about 20 minutes. Would you like me to stay, or would you prefer privacy on your first night here? The question caught Ethan off guard. It was her home, after all. Yet she was asking permission to remain, as if acknowledging that despite the circumstances, this space was temporarily theirs. Before he could answer, Lucia spoke up. You should stay and have pizza with us. Daddy never has friends over for dinner. Alexandra looked at Ethan, one eyebrow slightly raised, as if to say, well, we'd be happy to have you join us, he said, though friends was hardly the word he'd used to describe their complex relationship. Then I'll stay. She moved toward the kitchen. Wine. I believe there's a decent Cabernet in the pantry. I don't drink often, Ethan admitted, but tonight might be an exception. As Alexandra opened the wine, Lucia tugged at Ethan's sleeve. Can I go explore the garden, Daddy? Please. Not alone, Misha. It's dark outside. The garden is quite safe, Alexandra interjected. It's enclosed, and there are security cameras covering the entire property, but I understand your caution. She set down 2 wine glasses. Perhaps we could all take a quick tour before dinner arrives? Outside, the night air was cool and fragrant with jasmine. Path lights illuminated a small but meticulously designed space, flowering shrub, a stone bench beside a tiny pond, and at the center, a magnificent maple tree whose branches created a natural canopy. Lucia ran ahead, delighting in the discovery of solar lights that changed colors and a small stone bird bath where a family of finches had built a nest. This is beautiful, Ethan said, genuinely impressed. Did you design it yourself? Alexandra shook her head. I hired a landscape architect. I rarely have time to enjoy it, to be honest. That seems to be a theme, he observed, then immediately regretted the presumption. I'm sorry, that was out of line. No, you're right. She took a sip of her wine. I have a lot of beautiful things that I never make time to appreciate. It's a hazard of the position, I suppose. They walked in silence for a moment, watching Lucia dart from one discovery to another, her excitement a bright counterpoint to the sedate elegance of the garden. She's quite remarkable, Alexandra said finally. It's very self-possessed for her age. She had to grow up faster than I would have liked after her mother died, Ethan replied, but she's still very much a child in all the ways that matter. Alexandra nodded, her expression thoughtful. Children are resilient, more so than adults. Sometime. Do you have children? Ethan asked, then immediately regretted the personal question. No. The single word carried a weight that suggested a more complex answer beneath it. My career has always come first. There never seemed to be time for a family. Before Ethan could respond, the security system chimed, announcing the arrival of dinner. As they walked back toward the house, Lucia between them, he noticed Alexandra watching his daughter with an expression he couldn't quite read, something between curiosity and a more complicated emotion that might have been regret. Dinner was a surprisingly relaxed affair. They sat at the kitchen island, eating pizza from the box. Ethan had half expected Alexandra to insist on proper plates and cutlery, but she seemed content to fold her slice and eat with her hands like the rest of them. Lucia dominated the conversation, peppering Alexandra with questions about her house, her job, and whether she had any pets. No pets, Alexandra answered, wiping her hands on a napkin. I travel too much to properly care for an animal. That's sad, Lucia declared with a child's blunt honesty. Everyone should have something to love and take care of. Alexandra's expression flickered with something that might have been discomfort. Perhaps you're right. When Lucia excused herself to wash her hands, Alexandra turned to Ethan. She's quite perceptive. Sometimes too much so, he agreed. Sorry if she's been asking too many questions. Not at all. It's refreshing. In my world, people rarely say what they're actually thinking. There are too many agendas, too much politics. Like the board meeting today, she smiled wryly. Exactly like that. Walter and Diane have been trying to push me out for months. They think I'm too aggressive, too focused on innovation at the expense of quarterly profits. Are you? Ethan asked, genuinely curious. Alexandra considered the question. Probably. My father built this company by always looking 3 steps ahead. I believe in that philosophy. She took a sip of wine. But it doesn't win me many friends in the boardroom. Does that bother you? I didn't used to think so. She traced the rim of her glass with one finger. I told myself that respect was more important than being liked. That results mattered more than relationships. And now, her eyes met his, surprisingly vulnerable, and now I'm not so sure anymore. The moment was interrupted by Lucia's return. Daddy, can we watch a movie? There's a big TV in the living room. Ethan checked his watch. One movie, then bed. It's already past your usual bedtime. They moved to the living room, where Lucia immediately took charge of the remote, navigating through streaming services with the ease of a digital native. She selected an animated film about a young girl on a quest to save her family's village. As the movie began, Ethan expected Alexandra to excuse herself. Surely she had important CEO things to do rather than watch children's movies. To his surprise, she settled onto the couch, keeping a careful distance from him but showing no signs of leaving. Halfway through the film, Ethan glanced over to find Lucia had fallen asleep, her head resting against Alexandra's arm. The CEO sat perfectly still, as if afraid the slightest movement might disturb the child, who had trustingly dozed off beside her. I can move her, Ethan whispered. Alexandra shook her head slightly. It's fine, she whispered back. The scene was so incongruous. The formidable Alexandra Langford, who commanded a multinational corporation with ruthless efficiency, now sitting motionless to avoid disturbing a sleeping child. When the movie ended, Ethan carefully lifted Lucia into his arms. She stirred slightly but didn't wake. I'll put her to bed, he said softly. I'll be right back. In the guest bedroom, he tucked Lucia under the covers of a bed that was far more luxurious than her own at home. She sighed in her sleep, curling around the stuffed rabbit she had insisted on bringing from their apartment. Sweet dreams, Mija, he whispered, kissing her forehead. When he returned to the living room, Alexandra was standing by the windows, looking out at the garden illuminated by moonlight. She had refilled their wine glasses. She's asleep, she asked as he approached. Out like a light. It's been a long, exciting day for her. For both of you, I imagine. She handed him a glass. I owe you an apology, Ethan. For what? For dragging you and your daughter into this situation. Into my problem. Ethan shook his head. You didn't drag us anywhere. I'm the one who found the diamond. I'm the one who tackled Reynolds. Still, your life has been completely disrupted because of me. Our lives were disrupted 3 years ago when Maria died, Ethan said quietly. Everything since then has just been adaptation. Alexandra's expression softened. Tell me about her, your wife. The request surprised him. Few people asked about Maria anymore. Even friends seemed to think it would be painful for him to discuss her. She was vibrant, he began, the word feeling inadequate. Always laughing, always planning the next adventure. She was a kindergarten teacher, had a way of connecting with children that seemed like magic. He smiled at the memory. She could walk into a room of screaming 5-year-olds and have them sitting in a circle, completely engaged. Within minutes, she sounds remarkable. She was. Lucia has her smile, her curiosity. He took a sip of wine. When Maria got sick, it happened so fast. Stage 4 ovarian cancer. By the time they caught it, he trailed off, the familiar ache returning. I'm sorry, Alexandra said, and the words felt genuine, not merely obligatory. Me too, he set down his glass. But we've made it work, Lucia and I. We have our routines, our little traditions. It's not the life I imagined, but it's ours. Alexandra was quiet for a moment. I admire that, she said finally. The ability to adapt, to find joy even after loss. What about you? Ethan asked. You mentioned your father earlier. Were you close? She laughed, the sound surprisingly bitter. Not remotely. Harold Langford was a business genius and a terrible father. He treated me more like an heir apparent than a daughter. Constantly testing, constantly pushing. That sounds difficult. It was, but it made me who I am. She turned back to the window. Sometimes I wonder what would have happened if he'd been different. If he'd valued anything beyond the company, beyond legacy. You might have been happier, Ethan suggested gently. Maybe, or maybe I wouldn't have achieved what I have. She looked at him directly. Do you think it's possible to have both? Success and whatever it is that you and Lucia have? The question hung between them, weighted with meaning that extended far beyond the words themselves. Ethan considered it carefully. I think different people define success differently, he said finally. By your definition, Wealth, power, professional achievement? Probably not, at least not in equal measure. Something always give, she nodded, accepting his honesty without offense. And by your definition, for me, success is much simpler. Can I provide for my daughter? Can I be there when she needs me? Can I help her grow into someone kind, someone brave? He shrugged. Everything else is secondary. Alexandra's phone chimed with a message. She glanced at it, her expression shifting back to the focused CEO he had first met that morning. News about Reynolds? Ethan asked. Yes, the investigation is moving quickly. They've identified at least 2 other executives who were involved in the scheme. She slipped the phone back into her pocket. I should go. There are calls I need to make. Strategy to discuss with legal. Of course. She moved toward the door, then paused. Thank you for dinner. And the movie, it was, she seemed to search for the right word. Nice. It was. Ethan agreed. Lucia enjoyed having you join us. Just Lucia. There was a hint of teasing in her voice, so subtle he almost missed it. I enjoyed it too, he admitted. Something in her expression softened. Good night, Ethan. Good night, Alexandra. After she left, Ethan remained by the window for a long time, watching the lights of the main house, trying to reconcile the Alexandra Langford, who had sat in stillness, to avoid waking a sleeping child, with the formidable CEO who commanded boardrooms and uncovered corporate conspiracies. They seemed like 2 different people, yet somehow they were the same woman. The next morning, Ethan woke to sunlight streaming through unfamiliar windows and the distant sound of laughter. For a moment, he was disoriented. The luxurious bedding, the tasteful artwork on the walls, the subtle scent of lavender from the high-end linens, none of it belonged to his world. Then the events of the previous day rushed back. The diamond, Reynolds, the gun, Alexandra Langford. He showered quickly in the marble-tiled bathroom, then hesitated before the garment bag that had been delivered. Curiosity won out, and he unzipped it to find casual but expensive clothing in exactly his size. Jeans, button-down shirts, a light sweater, even socks and underwear still in their packaging. The attention to detail was both impressive and slightly unnerving. Dressed in clothes that probably cost more than his monthly rent, he followed the sound of laughter to the kitchen. There he found a scene so unexpected it stopped him in his tracks. Lucia and Alexandra Langford making pancakes together. His daughter stood on a step stool at the counter, tongue caught between her teeth in concentration as she carefully measured flour into a bowl. Alexandra, dressed in slim-fitting jeans and a simple white blouse, a far cry from her corporate armor, was cracking eggs with practiced precision. The secret, she was saying, is to separate the whites from the yolks first. It makes the pancakes fluffier. Is that how your mom taught you? Lucia asked, reaching for the vanilla extract. A flicker of something crossed Alexandra's face. So brief, Ethan almost missed it. No, I learned from a chef in Paris when I was about your age. You went to Paris when you were 10? Lucia's eyes widened. My father had business there. He took me along because my mother was ill. Alexandra began whisking the egg whites. I was bored during the meetings, so I wandered into the hotel kitchen. The chef took pity on me and taught me how to make the perfect pancakes. Good morning, Ethan said, finally stepping into the room. Both turned, Lucia with a wide grin, Alexandra with a more reserved smile that nevertheless reached her eyes. Daddy, Ms. Alexandra is teaching me French pancakes. I see that. He raised an eyebrow at Alexandra. I didn't realize CEO skills included culinary expertise. There's a lot you don't know about me, Mr. Rodriguez. The teasing lilt in her voice was new, a glimpse of a woman who existed beyond boardrooms and corporate crises. And clearly, he moved to the coffee maker, preparing himself a cup from the expensive-looking beans beside it. Do you always make breakfast for your guests? Only the special ones, she replied, then immediately looked as if she regretted the candor. More briskly, she added, besides, I was already here for a morning briefing with security. There have been developments, good ones or bad ones? Ethan asked, instantly alert. Alexandra glanced meaningfully at Lucia, who was absorbed in adding blueberries to the pancake batter. We'll discuss it after breakfast. The meal was delicious, Light, fluffy pancakes drizzled with real maple syrup, fresh berries on the side. Lucia chattered excitedly about the garden she'd explored that morning, the family of rabbits she'd spotted near the hedges, and her plans to draw them after breakfast. "There's a sketch pad and colored pencils in the study," Alexandra told her. "You're welcome to use them." After they finished eating, Lucia scampered off to the study, leaving the adults alone at the table. "She's quite talented," Alexandra observed. "I saw some of her drawings from yesterday. She has a good eye for detail. She gets that from her mother," Ethan said. "De Maria was an artist before she became a teacher." Alexandra nodded, then her expression grew serious. "About those developments. The police arrested Walter Kincaid last night, the board member, the older man who objected to my appointment. Yes, they found evidence on his personal laptop linking him directly to Reynolds. Apparently, they've been planning this for nearly a year, a coordinated effort to frame me for fraud, trigger a company scandal, crash our stock, and then use the crisis to force me out." Ethan sat back, stunned. "Why? What would they gain?" "Control." Alexandra's voice was flat. "Once I was disgraced and removed, Walter would step in as interim CEO. Then he would implement his vision for the company, cutting R&D, focusing on short-term profits, possibly selling off our most innovative divisions to competitors. That seems extreme. Corporate politics often are. The higher the stakes, the more ruthless the players." She sipped her coffee. "The good news is that the immediate threat has been neutralized. Walter is in custody, and the third conspirator, a VP in our finance department, is cooperating with authorities in exchange for leniency. So we're safe. Lucia and I can go home." Alexandra hesitated. "The police believe so?" "Yes, but I'd prefer if you stayed one more day, just to be certain. The investigation is still ongoing, and there could be loose ends we're not aware of." Ethan studied her face, suspecting there was more to her request than simple caution. But before he could press further, his phone rang, the school nurse's number flashing on the screen. "Hello?" he answered, already rising from his chair, a familiar knot of worry forming in his stomach. "Mr. Rodriguez, this is Nurse Chen from Westview Elementary. Lucia's emergency inhaler is expired, and I noticed she's due for a refill on her daily medication as well." Ethan closed his eyes briefly. With everything that had happened, he'd forgotten about Lucia's prescription refill. "I'm sorry. I'll take care of that today." "Please do. Her asthma action plan states she should have a current rescue inhaler with her at all times." "I understand. Thank you for letting me know." After he hung up, he found Alexandra watching him with concern. "Is everything all right?" "Lucia's asthma medication. I need to refill her prescriptions." He checked his watch. "I should go now before the pharmacy gets busy." "I can have someone pick it up for you," Alexandra offered immediately. "No, I should go myself. There's usually paperwork for the insurance, and I need to update her emergency inhaler at school." He hesitated. "Would it be all right if Lucia stayed here while I run this errand? I won't be more than an hour." "Of course." Alexandra seemed almost pleased at the prospect of watching Lucia. "We'll continue our art project. She's quite determined to capture those rabbits on paper." As Ethan gathered his wallet and keys, Alexandra handed him a small black credit card. "For the medication," she said, when he looked confused. "That's not necessary. I can cover it." "I'm sure you can, but you wouldn't be running this errand if I hadn't disrupted your life. Please, consider it a small compensation for the inconvenience." Her tone made it clear this wasn't charity, but a practical solution to a problem she felt partially responsible for. Still, Ethan hesitated. "Ethan," she said softly, "I know what asthma medication costs, even with insurance. Please use the card." Something in her voice, a subtle note of understanding that went beyond mere generosity, made him reconsider. He took the card with a nod of thanks. "The driver is waiting out front," she added. "He'll take you wherever you need to go." 30 minutes later, Ethan stood at the pharmacy counter, watching the pharmacist process Lucia's prescriptions. The total, nearly $300 even with insurance, appeared on the screen. Without comment, he handed over Alexandra's black card. The pharmacist's eyebrows rose slightly as she processed the payment. "Will you be needing a receipt, Mr. Rodriguez?" Yes, please, he would insist on reimbursing Alexandra, regardless of her protests. As he waited, he noticed a woman watching him from the vitamin aisle. Something about her seemed vaguely familiar, though he couldn't place her. When she caught his eye, she quickly looked away, busying herself with examining a bottle of supplements. The pharmacist returned with his medications and receipt. "And all set, Mr. Rodriguez. These should last her about 3 months. And I've included the updated rescue inhaler for school. Thank you." He gathered the items and headed for the exit, an uneasy feeling prickling the back of his neck. Outside, Alexandra's driver waited beside the car. As Ethan approached, he saw the woman from the pharmacy exit behind him, pulling out her phone. She spoke briefly, her eyes following Ethan as he got into the car. Everything all right, sir?" the driver asked, noticing Ethan's expression. "I'm not sure," Ethan replied, glancing back at the woman, who was now walking quickly toward a car parked across the lot. "Could you wait a moment before we leave?" The woman got into a nondescript sedan. Instead of driving away, she remained parked, apparently watching them. "Actually," Ethan said, a cold certainty settling in his stomach, "I think we should get back to the estate now." The driver pulled away from the pharmacy immediately, checking the rearview mirror with practiced vigilance. "Sir, is someone following us?" "I'm not sure," Ethan replied, turning to look through the rear window. "There was a woman inside who seemed to be watching me, and now she's in her car, just sitting there." The driver nodded, making a sharp right turn at the next intersection. "I'll take an indirect route back to the estate, just to be safe." Ethan watched as they wove through side streets, making unpredictable turns. After a few minutes, he spotted the same sedan several cars behind. "She's still there," he said quietly. The driver's expression remained professionally neutral, but his hands tightened on the wheel. He pressed a button on the dashboard. "This is Michael. I believe we're being followed. Grey sedan. License plate starting with TRN. Please alert security and inform Ms. Langford." A calm voice responded immediately. "Understood. Proceed to the secondary entrance. Security will meet you there." Ethan's heart pounded as he thought of Lucia back at the guest house. "Is my daughter in danger?" "The estate is secure, sir," the driver assured him. "Ms. Langford's security team is the best in the business." They made several more turns, the sedan maintaining its distance but clearly following their path. Then the driver accelerated suddenly, taking a sharp turn into an unmarked road partially hidden by dense hedges. "Secondary entrance," he explained, as they approached a gate that looked far less imposing than the main entrance Ethan had seen before. "It's not on any public record." The gate opened as they approached, closing immediately behind them. Through the rearview mirror, Ethan caught a glimpse of the sedan driving past the hidden turnoff, unable to follow. When they pulled up to the guest house, Alexandra was waiting outside, her expression tense. 2 men in dark suits stood nearby, speaking quietly into earpieces. "Are you all right?" she asked as Ethan stepped out of the car. "I'm fine. Where's Lucia?" "Inside with Mrs. Foster, my housekeeper. She's safe." Alexandra turned to the security men. "Report. The vehicle has been identified," one of them responded. "It's registered to Diane Mercer." Ethan recognized the name immediately. "The woman from the board meeting, with the sharp eyes." Alexandra's expression hardened. "Yes, our CFO after Reynolds." She turned back to the security officer. "Find her. I want to know what she's up to." "Already on it, ma'am. We've alerted local law enforcement as well." Alexandra nodded dismissively, then guided Ethan into the guest house with a hand lightly touching his back. Inside, Lucia sat at the kitchen table with an older woman who was helping her arrange colored pencils for her drawing. She looked up as they entered, her face brightening. "Daddy, look at my rabbits." She held up a surprisingly detailed sketch of the garden rabbits, their long ears and fluffy tails captured with impressive accuracy. "That's beautiful, Mija." He crossed to her, examining her artwork while discreetly checking for any signs of distress. She seemed completely unaware of the tension surrounding the adults. "Mrs. Foster, would you mind taking Lucia to see the koi pond?" Alexandra asked. "I hear the fish are particularly active this time of day." The housekeeper nodded understandingly. "Of course. Come along, dear. You can bring your sketchbook and draw the fish too." Once they were gone, Alexandra's composed facade slipped slightly. "This is my fault. I should have anticipated Diane would make a move once Walter was arrested." "What exactly is happening?" Ethan asked. keeping his voice low. Why would she be following me? Alexandra began pacing, her movements tightly controlled. Diane and Walter have been allies for years. They both want to take the company in a different direction, maximize short-term profits, cut innovation investments, probably sell to our main competitor within 2 years. But what does that have to do with me? She stopped pacing and faced him directly. You're the wrench in their plan, Ethan. You found the diamond, exposed Reynolds, prevented what could have been a catastrophic scandal for the company. And now, with Walter in custody, you're a key witness against him. That still doesn't explain why she'd follow me to a pharmacy. Information is power. She's trying to figure out what you know, who you've talked to, and Alexandra hesitated. And she's probably looking for leverage. Something to use against you if you testify against Walter. The implications sank in slowly. Lucia, Ethan said, his blood running cold. She was watching me get asthma medication for my daughter. Alexandra nodded grimly. Diane plays hardball. In her mind, everything and everyone is a potential chess piece. What are we going to do? First, you and Lucia are staying here until this is resolved. The estate is secure. No one gets in without my authorization. Alexandra moved to the window, scanning the grounds with practiced vigilance. Second, I'm calling an emergency board meeting for tomorrow morning. With Walter in custody and evidence of his conspiracy public, I have the leverage to force Diane's resignation. Ethan joined her at the window, watching Lucia and Mrs. Foster by the koi pond. His daughter was laughing, trying to sketch the colorful fish as they darted beneath the water's surface. I never imagined finding that diamond would lead to all this, he said quietly. Neither did I. Alexandra turned to face him, her expression softening slightly. I'm sorry you've been drawn into corporate warfare. It's not a world many people understand, including me, Ethan admitted. In my world, you do your job. You take care of your family. You try to be decent to people. All this plotting and scheming, it seems exhausting. It is. For a moment, Alexandra looked tired, not physically, but in a deeper, more fundamental way. Sometimes I wonder if it's worth it. Is it? She glanced out at the expansive grounds, the mansion, all the trappings of success. I used to think so without question, building on my father's legacy, pushing the company to new heights. It felt like purpose enough. And now, I'm not so certain. She hesitated, then added, spending time with you and Lucia these past 2 days has been illuminating. Before Ethan could respond, Alexandra's phone rang. She answered immediately, her expression shifting back to the focused CEO. Yes, I see. Keep me updated. She ended the call and turned to Ethan. They've located Diane. She's at her office in the Langford Tower, apparently meeting with several board members. Gathering allies, Ethan suggested. Most likely, which means I need to make some calls of my own. She moved toward the door. Will you be all right here? Security will remain posted, and Mrs. Foster can stay as long as needed. We'll be fine, Ethan assured her. Go do what you need to do. At the door, she paused, turning back to him with an expression he couldn't quite read. Ethan, have you thought any more about the job offer? The question caught him off guard. With everything that had happened, the offer of an executive position had seemed almost like a dream, something not quite real. I have, he said honestly. But I'm still not sure if it's the right fit. Alexandra nodded, accepting his ambivalence without pushing. Well, regardless of your decision, the finder's fee is being processed. The funds should be in your account by end of day tomorrow. Alexandra, he began, then stopped, uncertain how to express the complex mixture of gratitude and unease he felt. She seemed to understand without him finishing the thought. It's not charity, Ethan. You earned it, both by finding the diamond and by everything that's happened since. She smiled slightly. Besides, think of what Lucia could do with a proper college fund. With that, she was gone. The sound of her car pulling away from the guest house, the only indication of her departure. Ethan returned to the window, watching his daughter by the pond. $3 million, enough to secure Lucia's future, to move to a neighborhood with better air quality, to ensure her asthma received the best possible treatment, enough to change their lives completely. But at what cost? Being drawn into corporate power struggles, becoming a target for people like Diane Mercer, entering a world where people viewed relationships as transactions and loyalty as a commodity to be bought and sold. Yet as he watched Lucia Lucia laugh, her face bright with joy as she showed Mrs. Foster her fish drawings. He wondered if Alexandra Langford might be wrestling with questions of her own, questions about purpose and connection, about what truly constituted success. The emergency board meeting was called for 9 o'clock the following morning. Alexandra had arranged for Ethan to attend, explaining that as a key witness to Reynolds' actions, his presence would lend credibility to the proceedings. She'd also arranged for a security detail to remain with Lucia and Mrs. Foster at the estate. As they rode to Langford Tower in Alexandra's private car, Ethan felt distinctly out of place in the tailored suit she'd had delivered that morning. The fabric was finer than anything he'd ever worn, the fit impeccable despite the hasty measurements. "You look uncomfortable," Alexandra observed, glancing up from the tablet where she'd been reviewing documents. "I feel like I'm wearing a costume," Ethan admitted, adjusting the unfamiliar weight of the silk tie. "The suit doesn't make the man, Ethan. It's just packaging." She smiled slightly. "Though I must say, it's very effective packaging." The compliment, delivered with such casual confidence, caught him off guard. Before he could respond, she continued, her tone shifting to business. "Diane will be defensive. She'll try to paint you as an opportunist, someone looking to profit from a lucky find. She may even suggest we're conspiring together. Why would anyone believe that? Until 2 days ago, we'd never even spoken." Alexandra's expression was grim. "Corporate politics isn't about truth, Ethan. It's about perception and power. Diane has allies on the board who will back her regardless of evidence. So what's our strategy?" "Honesty," Alexandra replied simply. "You tell exactly what happened. From finding the diamond to Reynolds pulling the gun. No embellishments, no interpretations, just facts." The car pulled into the underground parking garage of Langford Tower. As they rode the private elevator to the executive floor, Ethan found himself thinking about the last time he'd been in this building, arriving before dawn with his cleaning cart, invisible to the corporate world that now expected him to participate in its power struggle. The boardroom was already full when they arrived. 10 board members sat around the massive table, their expressions ranging from curiosity to barely concealed hostility. Diane Mercer occupied a seat near the head of the table, her sharp gaze fixed on Ethan as he entered behind Alexandra. "Thank you all for coming on such short notice," Alexandra began, taking her place at the head of the table. "As you know, James Reynolds and Walter Kincaid have been arrested for conspiracy, fraud, and in Reynolds' case, assault with a deadly weapon. Their plot to frame me for insurance fraud and manipulate company stock has been uncovered, thanks in large part to Mr. Rodriguez." All eyes turned to Ethan, who stood uncomfortably beside Alexandra's chair. "On what some of you may not know," she continued, "is that the conspiracy appears to extend beyond Reynolds and Kincaid," her gaze fixed on Diane, who stiffened visibly. "Yesterday, Mr. Rodriguez was followed from my estate to a pharmacy and back by someone driving a car registered to Diane Mercer." Murmurs rippled through the room. Diane's face remained impassive, but her knuckles whitened as she gripped the armrests of her chair. "Burn, that's a serious accusation, Alexandra," she said, her voice cool. "Do you have proof beyond a license plate that could easily be explained? Perhaps I loaned my car to a friend?" "The police have obtained security footage from the pharmacy showing you personally watching Mr. Rodriguez, then making a phone call while following him to the car." Alexandra slid a folder across the table. "The call, incidentally, was to Walter Kincaid's personal attorney." Diane didn't touch the folder. "I was concerned about the company's sudden interest in a maintenance employee who conveniently found a $30 million diamond that had been reported stolen. The timing seems suspicious, especially given your hasty offer of an executive position. If you had concerns, the proper channel would have been to bring them to me or to legal." Alexandra's voice was deadly calm. "Instead, you chose surveillance. The question is why? Perhaps Ms. Mercer was hoping to find something she could use against Mr. Rodriguez," Ethan suggested quietly. "Something that might discredit his testimony against Walter Kincaid." Diane's eyes narrowed. "That's quite an imagination for a janitor." "Former construction foreman," Ethan corrected mildly, "and single father of a child with asthma, whose medication you watched me purchase. Was that meant to be leverage?" Miss Mercer A reminder of my daughter's vulnerability. The room fell silent. Several board members exchanged uncomfortable glances. "I think we've heard enough," said an older woman near the middle of the table, whom Ethan recognized as one of the quieter members from the previous meeting. "Diane, do you have anything to say in your defense?" "This is absurd," Diane snapped. "You're all being manipulated." Alexandra has been making increasingly erratic decisions for months. The excessive R&D spending, the cancelled partnerships with reliable vendors, and now this fixation on a janitor who happened to find a diamond that may not have been stolen in the first place. "The diamond was stolen," Alexandra countered, "by James Reynolds on your and Walter's instructions. The evidence is overwhelming, Diane." "Reynolds' confession alone, coerced, no doubt," Diane interrupted. Alexandra smiled thinly. "Perhaps you'd like to explain the $3 million transferred from your offshore account to Reynolds 2 weeks ago, or the meeting you had with Walter the night before the diamond went missing, which your assistant has now confirmed was to discuss asset removal." Diane's composure finally cracked. "You've always been so smug, Alexandra. So certain you know what's best for this company. Your father would be ashamed of what you've done to his legacy." "My father built this company on innovation and integrity," Alexandra replied, her voice steady despite the personal attack. "Not on theft and corporate sabotage. I've called this meeting not just to inform the board of these developments, but to request a vote of no confidence in Diane Mercer as CFO. The vote was swift and decisive, 8-2 in favor of removing Diane from her position, effective immediately. Security was called to escort her from the building, her access revoked, her company devices confiscated. As she was led past Ethan, she paused, her expression a mixture of fury and grudging respect. "You may think you've won something here, Mr. Rodriguez, but you've just traded one world you don't understand for another that will consume you." After she was gone, the remaining board members quickly approved Alexandra's proposal for an interim CFO, a long-time finance director known for her meticulous ethics. The meeting adjourned with a sense of wary relief, like the aftermath of a storm that had been brewing for too long. When they were alone in the boardroom, Alexandra exhaled slowly, some of the tension leaving her shoulders. "Well, that's done. Is it?" Ethan asked. "Or is this just another move in a game that never really ends?" She looked at him with newfound respect. Perceptive question. "In many ways, yes, the game continues, but with Reynolds, Walter, and Diane removed, we've reset the board, created space for something better. And what happens now? To the company, to you." Alexandra moved to the windows, looking out at the city sprawled below. "The company will stabilize. Our stock will recover once the full story emerges about how we uncovered and stopped the conspiracy." She turned back to him. "As for me, I've been doing some thinking about balance, purpose, the kind of legacy I truly want to leave." She smiled slightly. "You've been a disruptive influence, Ethan Rodriguez, in the best possible way. I just did what seemed right at the time." "Exactly. And that simple approach has made me question a lifetime of complicated strategies and calculated moves." She hesitated, then added, "Which brings me back to the job offer." Ethan nodded, having expected this. "And I've been thinking about it too, and I'm grateful for the opportunity, truly. But I'm not sure if—" "Let me stop you there," Alexandra interrupted gently. "The original offer still stands, but I'd like to propose an alternative that might better align with your priority." "I'm listening." "Langford Industries has a charitable foundation, somewhat neglected in recent years, I admit. I'd like to revitalize it, with a specific focus on supporting single parents and children with chronic health conditions." Her eyes met his directly. "I'd like you to run it." Ethan stared at her, caught completely off guard. "Me? I don't have any experience with charities or foundations." "You have lived experience, which is far more valuable. You understand the challenges these families face in a way no MBA ever could." She moved closer. "And the position would still come with executive compensation and benefits, regular hours, and the flexibility to be there for Lucia. But instead of managing building operations, you'd be creating programs that actually help families like yours." The offer resonated in a way the previous one hadn't. This wasn't about elevating him into a world he didn't belong in. It was about using his experience to make a difference for others facing the same struggles. "I'd need to learn a lot," he said cautiously. We all do, every day, she smiled. So, what do you think? 3 months later, Ethan stood in the newly renovated offices of the Langford Foundation, watching as Lucia proudly showed Alexandra her latest art project, a colorful mural depicting families of all configurations, which would hang in the Foundation's Family Resource Center. The past months had been a whirlwind of change. The $3 million finder's fee had allowed them to move to a house in a neighborhood with clean air, close to the best specialists for Lucia's asthma. The Foundation work was challenging but deeply fulfilling, allowing Ethan to create programs that directly addressed the gaps he had experienced as a single parent. And then there was Alexandra, still the formidable CEO of Langford Industries, but somehow softer around the edges. She had become a regular visitor to their home, initially under the guise of foundation business, but increasingly just to spend time with them. Lucia had taken to her immediately, sensing the genuine interest beneath Alexandra's sometimes awkward attempts at connection. "It's perfect," Alexandra told Lucia, examining the mural. "It captures exactly what the Foundation stands for." "Daddy says it's going to help other kids like me," Lucia said proudly. "Your daddy is a very wise man." Alexandra glanced at Ethan, a warmth in her eyes that still surprised him. "Finding that diamond changed a lot of things, didn't it?" "It did," Ethan agreed. "But not in the ways I expected." That evening, as they walked through the park near their new home, Lucia ran ahead to the playground, leaving Ethan and Alexandra to stroll in comfortable silence. "The board approved the new innovation initiative today," Alexandra said eventually. "The one I've been fighting for all year." "Congratulations," Ethan replied sincerely. "That's a big win." "It is. But do you know what's strange?" She paused, watching Lucia on the swings. "It doesn't feel as important as it once would have." "No," she shook her head. "I used to measure success solely by corporate metrics, market share, stock price, growth projections. Now," she gestured toward Lucia, "now I find myself measuring it differently." "That happens when your world expands," Ethan said quietly. "Udi, when you start to see that there are different kinds of value, different kinds of wealth." Alexandra turned to him, her expression open in a way it rarely was at Langford Tower. "I never thanked you properly, you know. For finding the diamond, you've more than thanked me. Not for the diamond, for showing me what I was missing, for reminding me that there's more to life than boardrooms and balance sheet." She hesitated, then added, "For letting me be part of your family, even in this small way." As Lucia waved to them from the top of the slide, her face alight with joy, Ethan thought about the morning he'd found the diamond, how that single moment had altered the course of their lives in ways he could never have imagined. "And some treasures," he said, taking Alexandra's hand in his, "are found in the most unexpected places."